YouTube Rewind. Everyone's been talking about it, and everyone seamlessly all agrees that it was pretty awful. And because this is such a heavily covered topic, I don't expect everyone to want to watch this video. I've made 2 previous videos before this, you can watch those, but I think there is a point I can make that no one else really is talking about. This is going to be a little bit more of a serious video because it's a topic that needs a lot more boring explanation. YouTube Rewind is now the most disliked video on YouTube. It's so bad, even creators that starred in the video came out speaking against it. Plenty of people have made videos talking about the new YouTube Rewind and their problems with it, and there's nothing wrong with any of those videos, but I think there's something deeper to explore here. Some people's points about the new YouTube Rewind is that it featured creators that weren't even really YouTubers, like Ninja, and the rest of them weren't very recognizable. But the same can be said about last year's Rewind, and probably the year before that as well. 2017's Rewind featured Damn Daniel, and I don't even need to get into why that's just wrong. He's not even a YouTuber. But this isn't really anything new. Creators have come out against previous YouTube Rewinds, even creators that were featured in those Rewinds, speaking against long hours they had to work, and how the Rewind didn't really represent YouTube. YouTube Rewind hasn't featured PewDiePie for multiple years now. It's not just this one where they forgot to bring him in. It's a calculated decision that they made a while ago. So what separates this one from the previous years that makes it the most disliked video on YouTube? I mean, other YouTube Rewinds have had pretty high dislike ratios, but what separates this specific one to make it the highest disliked on YouTube? It's very apparent that they make YouTube Rewind now as a showcase to advertisers. And this wouldn't actually be that big of an issue if it weren't for the fact that years ago, when YouTube Rewind was first started, it was genuinely a showcase of creators, the most popular stuff over that year. Now it's become something to demonstrate to brands that YouTube is still safe to advertise on, even after all of the controversies, even after Logan Paul walked into a forest and laughed at a dead body, even after PewDiePie did some Hitler salutes. We don't talk about that. Even after all of the hit pieces that many social media sites have thrown against YouTube, they're trying to show that it's still a place safe for advertisers. And in doing so, they separated themselves from the creators, the people who make YouTube what it is. I think it's obvious why Logan Paul wasn't in it. I think it's somewhat obvious why PewDiePie wasn't in it. Both of them had huge controversy against them. So some people are wondering, why wasn't Shane Dawson in it? He's a fairly friendly creator. There's nothing super controversial about him, and I think I can explain that too. The reason Shane Dawson would theoretically be in YouTube Rewind this year is because of his documentary series. He did one on TanaCon, one on Jeffree Star, and one on Jake Paul. These are some of the biggest series on YouTube ever. Even bigger than YouTube Red produced shows. They garnered hundreds of millions of views, but they weren't necessarily advertiser friendly. They dealt with things like mental health, and even if you were to ignore the Jake Paul documentary series, he also did one on TanaCon, which was a disaster. And that reflects poorly on YouTube. So I understand their decisions to leave out a lot of larger creators this year and people who actually impacted the site this year. I get it, totally. I understand the decision. Ultimately, their goal wasn't to appease creators, it was to attract advertisers and keep the current ones they have on their site. The problem is, in ignoring all of the other creators on this platform and pretending that they don't exist because they're too controversial, you pissed all of them off. And now it's become the most disliked video on YouTube. You think when an advertiser sees that, they're gonna be like, I'd love to be on YouTube. YouTube is a platform that knows their creators, and they know their audience too. I mean, look, 10 million people seem to agree. They're just making YouTube look like a real paradise for advertisers. And trying to distance himself from controversial content and controversy in general, YouTube caused their own controversy. It was the wrong decision for them because ultimately no advertiser is going to want to work with their site after seeing this. Since the first YouTube Rewind, YouTube has been slowly phasing out real creators and more of just trying to focus on popular things on the internet, like Bongo Cat. You guys like Bongo Cat? Love Bongo Cat. When YouTube Rewind first started, it was purely focused on creators that are on YouTube. And over time, they slowly started phasing that out for more popular things on the internet, so they didn't have to focus as much on YouTube. So if there was any controversy around that time, YouTube could just ignore it and say, well, there are more popular things on the internet around this time, like Damn Daniel. Everyone loved Damn Daniel. And they got by with doing that for a while, because you can ignore some things so long as there are more popular things to replace them with. However, this year there wasn't really anything bigger than the Suicide Forest incident. This year there wasn't really anything bigger than Shane Dawson's documentary series. This year there wasn't really anything bigger than PewDiePie versus T-Series. Everyone knows what those things are. I don't even need to elaborate. And YouTube still chose to ignore them. And so while they were able to hide doing this for previous years enough that it didn't cause that much of an outcry. This year, it was too blatantly obvious to everyone who watched it that it caused its own controversy. Eventually, YouTube Rewind, if it keeps going down the path that it is, will just become Internet Rewind, Year Rewind. If there's any more irony that can be found in this year's YouTube Rewind, it's literally just in the title. They called this one Everyone Controls Rewind. And as it would turn out, only the advertisers do. Even the people in Rewind didn't get to control Rewind. One of the most prominent people who was in it, whose name is mentioned at the very beginning,
I would want Fortnite and Marquez Brown.
Even after he came out speaking against this year's Rewind, he ended off his Twitter thread with "Subscribe to PewDiePie." One of the biggest things that YouTube Rewind missed out on. I think that is actually just the final nail in the coffin. Playing devil's advocate and trying to see things from YouTube's perspective really doesn't make the situation any better. I can see why they did things the way they did, but ultimately acknowledging their more controversial creators would have probably worked out for them better in the long run. Doing what they did helps nobody. It doesn't help the creators, it doesn't help the audience, and it definitely doesn't even help YouTube. So I mean, someone should lose their job, realistically. Susan, get out. Go. It's impossible for YouTube to have not seen the reaction to their video. And they haven't responded for about a week now. If you just look at the replies to any of their tweets, you can just see people are not having any of it. Even YouTube India. YouTube India is furious. By the way, it's clear to see here who YouTube backs in this war. Okay, so it's now the following day. I guess YouTube actually did respond. A week late. Very unfortunately for my video. Their entire response to this situation was summed up in 2 tweets. So you know it's very meaningful when your apology can at the very most be like 2 sentences. They start off with a nice little playful, "New record. Oh wait. You're hip, YouTube. You're really with it. That 40-year-old man in corporate who posted that in your Twitter account, he's with it." This is almost as good as when YouTube tweeted out, "Roses are red, violets are blue, subscribe to black creators." Almost as good. The very obviously not 40-year-old man in a suit followed that tweet up with, "Thanks to the creators that took part in Rewind, and thanks to the community that responded." I'm sure they're thankful of that community, because that makes things a lot easier for them. We hear what you're saying, and we want to make next year better for all of you. Watch this space. I will watch this space. Thank you for this epic and savage response, John Johnson, PR guy at YouTube. I couldn't have done it better myself, you know? YouTube has such a garbage PR team. Where do they even find these people? Who approved this? Who let this happen? Why? Considering it took them a week to say, and one of them was just a big frick you, I can't swear in my videos anymore. They take away my money if I do that. It's just a bit ridiculous, isn't it? I'm worried they're just gonna take it at surface value and say, well, they just want a better YouTube Rewind, when in reality, they just want a better YouTube. And YouTube Rewind represents all of the anger that everyone has towards YouTube right now. If they just see it as, we need to make a better Rewind next year. Maybe next year, we'll have PewDiePie come back. That's not really gonna fix it. I hope that's not what they're thinking. Please? Please, YouTube. Please? I mean, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I'll see you guys next year. YouTube Rewind this year was specifically worse than other years. I will admit that for sure. But that's not why people have so much hatred towards it. People have so much hatred towards it because of what it represents. I think if this year's YouTube Rewind was uploaded by itself, with no other prior history to it, it wouldn't have gotten the same level of hate that it did. There's been a buildup over the past few years of YouTube slowly getting more and more distant from their viewers, from their creators, from everyone on their platform. This year's YouTube Rewind sums all of that up. YouTube Rewind isn't about YouTubers. It isn't about YouTube. It isn't about the audience on YouTube, the creators. It's just about what advertisers want to see. And I think at this point, even the advertisers can see through that. YouTube Rewind can be something that advertisers would like to see, and it can still represent YouTube better than this year's did. People aren't actually upset that YouTube Rewind has become something that advertisers want to see. They're upset that YouTube Rewind is excluding any kind of creator or topic that advertisers wouldn't want to see. And there are ways of going about that wouldn't be the most controversial. There are ways of going about that wouldn't actually harm YouTube's reputation. But they're way too careful to even try. And that's where YouTube Rewind completely failed. I'm sorry if this video wasn't the most entertaining thing in the world. Like I said, there are other videos I make that are typically a bit more entertaining, but I felt like I should have said something to explain to anyone who doesn't understand why it's the most disliked video on YouTube and why something like this just should never happen again. And as much as I could have just gone over YouTube Rewind and made fun of it and gone, haha, Ninja on the battle bus in Fortnite, isn't that epic? That's been done. There are plenty of videos like that. Next year, if you don't want as much hate, maybe you should put me in Rewind. might be wondering why I'm wearing glasses. That's because last video someone said I wasn't staring at the camera, and that got to me pretty bad.